Well, looks like the Acolyte isn't getting a season 2. There's a lot on my mind about this cancellation. Star Wars as a whole, really, Lucasfilm and Disney and all that stuff, and the community, of course. I've never really talked about this in like a proper format, though I've talked about my enjoyment and love of Star Wars on streams and stuff. But I feel like today is a good time for me to actually, not exactly sit down as I am standing, but stand up and talk about how I feel about this franchise as a whole. And I feel like right now is a good time because Outlaws is coming out tomorrow, so why not? If you're a regular on the channel, you know that this isn't my normal sort of content. I usually make videos about video games and stuff, but I made this channel as a sort of place for me to just talk about stuff I'm interested in, so here we go. Let's get some things straight right off the bat. I enjoyed The Acolyte. Now, if you didn't, that's fine. It was not perfect. There was a lot of issues with it that I'm gonna talk about later, but it really depends on why you didn't like it. Because I'm gonna talk a lot about the issues that it has with pacing and writing and structure. But if you come in here with your whole like vague notions of, oh, it was bad because it was woke or because there was too much this, too much that, and the writing was bad without any like actual depth into what you're saying here, I don't exactly respect your opinions on media, and it would be better if you just left. If you watched the series and it didn't click with you because you didn't find it interesting, the action wasn't for you, or you felt the story wasn't something you wanted to see, that's valid. Not everything is going to click with everyone all the time. But if you come in here with some variant of it was bad because woke, DEI, whatever, your comment's getting deleted and you're getting removed from that channel.
But that's censorship.
Yeah, it is. But if you only watched a few episodes while it was airing and you didn't finish it, I do understand. But I would implore you to go back and try to give it a finish, because it flows a lot better if you sit down and watch it in 1 to 2 sittings for a couple reasons I'll get into later. And since I'll be talking about this series as a whole, there's gonna be spoilers for the whole thing, so don't get mad at me if you didn't get around to watching it and I spoiled the ending for you. Prologue. Star Wars is for everyone. While previous projects have had their fair share of online controversy and discourse dating all the way back to Return of the Jedi, Ewoks, anyone? The chatter around this show as it released was some of the most divisive and intense that I've ever seen and a little bit taken part in. Just like with fucking everything lately, dude. It's very, very polarizing. It's either the best thing ever, it saved Star Wars, it's the best character work, the best writing you've ever seen, it was literally perfect, or it was total garbage and affront to cinema, the lore, the characters, the previous stories, and your mother or something. I don't know. And for the morons who will take that out of context, I'm being hyperbolic, okay? Yes, there were opinions that weren't that extreme, but the super extreme ones are always the loudest and most annoying. Anyway, in the midst of all that, a bunch of Star Wars adjacent influencers slash content creators slash whatever the hell the term is now rallied around the concept for Star Wars is for everyone. And while the actual movement was a mess because Star Wars fans can't be fucking normal, I want to discuss that idea on its own regardless. The general sentiment is a response to newer fans, mostly women and people of color, being constantly ostracized from the community, called tourists, not real fans, and genuinely harassed by so-called real fans. The shit that I've read from jackasses in comment sections and DM screenshots is appalling, and any of you that act that way should be fucking ashamed of yourselves, alright? It's disgusting. What was I talking about? Oh, right, yeah. Star Wars is for everyone. It should be accessible to anyone who wants to enjoy it regardless of who they are or their knowledge of the lore or whatever. Because somebody doesn't know your specific glup shitto or because they've only seen 1 or 2 things because they're new doesn't make them a tourist. New people should be welcomed and celebrated. Because guess what? That's another person who shares your interest that you could talk to about said interest. How is this hard to understand? That also means, yes, these new audiences should be represented in the new stories. It's only logical to expand the stories to match a growing fan base. Star Wars is a vast, growing franchise with a massive galaxy full of lore, stories, characters, and themes. With something this big, there can and should be something for everybody. There's often this back and forth discussion about what is real Star Wars, and I've long since held the belief that there really isn't a solid definition. The primary movies follow essentially the exploits of one superpowered family wreaking havoc and then repairing said havoc. Yes, that's incredibly boiled down and simplified, but it works. Then you have movies like Rogue One or Solo that follow important characters or events to the main story, but serve mostly to tell story types not really seen previously in the universe. For example, Solo is a heist movie set in Star Wars. Rogue One is like this espionage war thriller movie set in Star Wars. What makes a project real Star Wars is entirely arbitrary and kind of comes down to the individual. And because of that, some stories are going to be more niche or targeted towards a specific demo. Let's just look at all the kids shows that come out. While there should be something for everybody, not every little thing will click with everybody. Part 1. Renewal and cancellation. I'm not going to split hairs here. While I'm sad the show isn't getting renewed, it doesn't exactly surprise me. The Acolyte tried something new and fresh for live-action Star Wars. While some might disagree with that statement, let me explain what I mean. All of the live-action projects we've had since the first movie have either been directly tied to the Skywalker family or set in and around their lifetimes. Even things like Solo, The Mandalorian, and Rogue One deal with important aspects of the Skywalker legacy, such as the literal empire that Anakin was instrumental to maintaining and Luke was to dismantling. The Acolyte being set in the High Republic almost a century before the Phantom Menace means it is outside Skywalker territory. Even Andor is still exploring the sort of low-level bureaucracy of the established big bad guys and is attached to a main character from a pretty well-regarded movie. So even if the themes, action, characters, or anything else don't necessarily seem new to some people, we should at least be able to all agree that the idea and the concept is trying something different. What I'm trying to say is that it's new territory with no established connection besides the universe itself. Of course, there are some cameos and lore stuff I'll get into, but as far as what we knew going in, there wasn't really anything to go off of, so there isn't too much of an established audience that they know for certain is gonna watch the show, besides people who just love anything Star Wars. The problem is when something like this goes off the established path, it should absolutely not have a $180 million price tag. With an attached budget like that, the show needs to be an absolute, total, complete smash hit. I'm certain that this is the primary reason there will be no renewal. It's just too much money. It just didn't get a good return on its investment, and a massive corp like Disney isn't going to take risks like that. Oh, hold on, wait. Come back up here, get away from the comment section. I'm not defending, that's not a defense for Disney, okay? This pisses me the fuck off. One thing we can all agree is that Disney as a corporation is the enemy. Of course, I'm certain there's a subset of people that hold that belief for different reasons, but the primary problem is that Disney is a shitty, overgrown, monopolistic, money grubber asshole corporation run by dickheads. All they care about is getting as much money as possible with as little effort as possible. That's why they're constantly making so many fucking sequels to everything and remaking older shit. And then when they do greenlight a new thing, if that new thing doesn't make $1 bazillion, it gets the axe. Just like the Acolyte. So what exactly went wrong with the Acolyte? This show is the most fired up I've seen the community, for better or worse, in a long time. Besides the new setting potentially risking viewers, I believe there are a few big reasons why the show did not hit whatever milestones Disney had for renewal. First things first is general quality. While I did enjoy the show and there were some really superb aspects, I do have some huge criticisms for it. The biggest one, like I said, being pacing. Watching The Acolyte week by week as it aired felt incredibly disjointed and weird. The season was 8 episodes, with a rough average of 36 minutes runtime apiece, minus credits. And with 2 of the episodes being primarily flashback episodes, and the second one being a sort of, oh, here's what really happened with the first one, it's just an odd choice for the length of the season and the length of the episodes. To me, the show suffered some of the base issues that Kenobi did in that it feels like it was originally going to be a movie that got stretched out and then demoted to a series. The best example of this, in my opinion, is the episodes 4 and 5. Day and night. These 2 episodes could and probably should have been a single episode. I understand what the writers were going for with that sort of oh shit moment into the cliffhanger for the end of episode 4, but damn it, it would have been so cool if we actually just went into the action, especially since in episode 5, when it opens up, we're already in the midst of the action. A couple of Jedi have already died, and we're kind of going into this episode waking up from Osha's perspective, and it's like, we already missed some of the fight. We missed some of the cool shit that we wanted to see. The Acolyte has a problem with managing its peaks and valleys, pacing-wise, and these 2 episodes encapsulate the issue perfectly. Episode 4, Day, is a relatively slow episode of build and build and build. It's a 2-pronged episode, following the task force as it hunts for May, and May as she hunts for Kelnaka with Chimera / the Stranger, as we all speculated and that were, confirmed in the next episode. It does a really good job of building suspense and tension, with the hints that Chimera is the Sith and seeing May turn on him while the task force gets closer and closer, then finding out somebody beat May to the punch on Kelnaka and took him out with clear ease as there's no real signs of a struggle, and finally the stranger pulling up in that very sinister kick-ass move that I love, that apparently a lot of people didn't love. I thought it was really cool, but that's me. The dramatic tension is there, but there's no real payoff. He flicks Osha away, and then he pushes everyone else off, and then credits. Just credits. And then we had to wait a week. If these two were one episode, or the whole series was just a movie, this building of tension would have been released, swinging into this really awesome fight scene that we had. And we also, would have been able to see the beginning of the fight, which would have been pretty sick. But instead, it feels like there's this gap that causes a screeching halt in the story. Another big example of this is dedicating 2 entire episodes to flashbacks of the same event. Now again, if this were a movie, these flashbacks would actually work really well if they were slightly abridged for runtime purposes, but as they stand, they're interruptions into the compelling narrative being built in the present day, if you will. I do appreciate the show don't tell approach, where we actually get time to understand what happened to May, Osha, and our primary Jedi, instead of just sitting down and saying, yeah, you two were separated, there was like this fire, and then there like wasn't this fire, and then like we did a bunch of stupid shit. It's just better to actually see it. But for one, the actual meat of the twin storyline wasn't that compelling enough for most people. And for 2, there just was not enough time in the story for 2 goddamn flashbacks! Episode 7's primary purpose is to round out the reality of Osha and May's separation, what happened to their family, and how everything really fell into place with the current characters. In a movie form, I could see with some alterations, this being a fantastic Act 3 reveal. But again, with some alterations. Episode 6 wasted a lot of time with the whole May impersonating Osha thing and that whole will she, won't she sabotage the ship bullshit plot line, especially since May has a big ass tattoo on her face that Sol should have seen immediately, and also May hadn't been around Osha for that long. She has no idea how she talks, acts, or anything like that. So why are we throwing this sitcom ass plot line into this show that's supposed to be taking itself very seriously? And then of course there was whatever the fuck Basil was doing in there. I don't understand Basil's purpose. Besides for merch or selling toys, which they're not even selling merch anymore. Why is Basil in the story? They could have just taken the tracker role and shifted it to a character that already existed in the series, and we could have saved like 10 minutes of runtime and an entire character slot, a bunch of budget on the CGI, and like everything else. A baffling decision to create a character just to bumble around and do random shit like that. Even the Ewoks had a proper purpose in the story, with them being natives to Endor and actually having a reason to help the protagonists against the Empire, but I digress. Anyway, Sol should have immediately clocked May. Then we skip that bullshit sitcom filler of 6, and we have that episode blend in the already great stuff between Chimera and Osha, where he's trying to turn her away from the Jedi, while we, through May, learn about what actually happened to her. So you can combine those two, right? I just feel like it makes more sense. While Osha's getting her moment to try to resist the dark side, we're understanding that, maybe she probably shouldn't resist the dark side. These people lied to her and kind of fucked up her entire life, So, I don't know, I feel like that would just be a better way to do those episodes. Especially since we get that dramatic irony pulling through at the same time, foreshadowing and justifying her eventual turn. But, I mean, I'm not a writer. Maybe there's reasons why it wasn't like that. But it feels like that would be better, right? Right? There's a really fantastic story in here about revenge, family bonds, and the folly of the Jedi with an attachment, but it's held back by extremely poor pacing, bad writing decisions, and the need to justify existence of episodes, plus the just not great execution at times. In a television format, while the overall season or series arc should take precedence, it is expected that each episode have their own beginning, middle, and end, or the episode lines start to blur and feel arbitrary. I'm not saying it should have had like a bad guy of the week format, but the writing and structure could have been tightened up significantly to shift the story into a better flow. Like I was just saying, by combining episodes 4 and 5, abridging some of the slower stuff, combining 6 and 7, omitting the filler fucking sitcom subplot thing that was going on there. Even without going to a movie format, the Acolyte could have done a really good, tight 6-episode miniseries deal that would have saved time, would have cleaned up useless story elements, and saved money in the budget. $180 million, everybody. $180 million. Where did all that money go? Because it doesn't feel like that was a $180 million project. So another big part besides the pacing is the storytelling itself. If the showrunner needs to do multiple interviews after every episode to clarify and explain things that happen in the episode, that really isn't a good sign. Leslie Headland had a lot of cool ideas and concepts, and her love for Star Wars lore is apparent. If you actually look at what she says in those interviews and still say she's trying to ruin the lore, destroy the legacy or whatever, or that she doesn't understand the lore, you look like a damn fool, okay? There's no putting a ribbon on that. You look like a fool if you actually believe that she doesn't understand or doesn't enjoy Star Wars lore, especially the prequels. Holy shit. Anyway, even pulling in obscure elements like Cortosis for the Stranger's helmet, incorporating it into his fighting style, shows one hell of an understanding of Star Wars lore that is based on the reactions to his helmet a lot of so-called true fans didn't know existed, which is kind of weird in my opinion. Now, we don't know exactly what happened behind the scenes at Lucasfilm. Like I said, where the hell did that money go? Maybe the issues I take were brought up and shot down by some executive. We just don't know that, because the passion is there, the knowledge is there, it was just not executed well. And with a budget like that, project needs to be a goddamn showstopper, all right? I feel like if they had condensed the story, removed the filler, and sharpened some of the edges to turn it into like a Star Wars story anthology film like Rogue One or Solo, it would have easily made its money back at the box office. Pretty quickly too, even with all of the other stuff that I'm gonna talk about. But even with all that other stuff, I guess maybe not, because the community is a goddamn nightmare. Part 2, the Fandom Menace. I want to reiterate, it is not a bad thing if you didn't like The Acolyte. I just spent like 10 minutes talking about its issues, and a lot of that is more than enough to turn somebody off. Hell, I've turned shows off for less. If I wasn't as into Star Wars as much as I was, I probably would have stopped watching around episode 3 like a lot of others did. But a lot of toxicity reared its ugly head around this show, even as recent as this week with the still unconfirmed cancellation. It's normal to dislike something you didn't click with. It's absolutely not normal or remotely okay to revel in something that people enjoy being canceled or ended or something like that. Like I said earlier about comment sections and DMs, for like 90% of people, if you say online you enjoyed this show, you would have at least one person pop up and say something along the lines of, well, yeah, you shouldn't, because it's stupid and bad. You shouldn't like it because it was shitty. Why? Why? And granted, I've been slightly guilty of this on like the opposite end in the sort of toxic positivity, because after weeks upon weeks of seeing people online just be absolute assholes because they don't like something that a lot of people did like, it's really hard to kind of mentally separate the people who just didn't enjoy something and the people who hate it for other reasons. But I'm trying to be better about that, which is why I'm trying to not attack the haters as much as I originally wanted to. I want to say I don't know why the toxic part of the fandom got so fired up about this show, but anyone with 3 brain cells can figure it out. I'll just leave that one unspoken. Again, you know who you are. I think people forget that while people who are really online like myself and a lot of other people that really like Star Wars don't take much stock in reviews or scores or anything like that, but a lot of the general public still does. And The Acolyte did suffer from a pretty huge hate and review bomb campaign. Don't even try to deny it. There were people review bombing the wrong movie or show or whatever the hell it was. It was like something else called The Acolyte, and then there was also like a Star Wars fan film called Acolytes. They got a few, like 10 or so negative reviews about The Acolyte. It's like people weren't even checking that they were review bombing the right thing. That's not normal I just didn't like the show behavior. That's insane. Okay? There's no one or two ways about it. That's fucking insane. That's weird as shit. Why? You can't see that that's actually happening and then just be like, oh no, I didn't get a hate campaign. People just didn't like the show. Really? Yeah. Anyway, and there were a decent amount of negative reviews on various sites that did demonstrate that they watched the show, understood the show, and it just wasn't for them. And you can tell that by the language they use, because holy shit, the people who actually hated it for other reasons besides the show, they have a drastically different level of language than the normal people who just were like, it wasn't for me, you know? It's pretty obvious. It's pretty fucking obvious, okay? Anyway, in my research for this video, trying to understand what was going on with the review bombing thing, I found a lot of really shitty criticism that I want to just do like a quick, stupid criticism debunking lightning round, because I spent 10 minutes criticizing the writing and pacing. So let's take a look at some of the shitty criticisms that people who clearly did not finish the show or did not understand what they were watching had to say. For one, fire in space. There are multiple instances of fire in Star Wars in space, dating all the way back to the original trilogy. It's anyone who has cared about Star Wars in any capacity over the past, how long, 40, 50 years or so, couldn't tell you it's space fantasy, not hard sci-fi. Like, it's such a nitpicky fucking thing. Get over yourself. And I saw this one on Google reviews, saying that there is no such thing as magic, while explicitly mentioning the Night Sisters in the exact same sentence. Which is, if you don't know, the Night Sisters are a group of Force-sensitive witches that use their connection in the Force to wield, what was that called again? What do they call it? Oh, magic! Wow! And they've been in the canon since like fucking 20 years ago. And they were originally introduced in the EU. You know, the EU that these people supposedly love? Magic using the Force has been a thing forever. It's not new. Come on. The third one being that the Acolyte was making the point that the Jedi are bad, which, for one, they aren't. That's not the point that was being made. In fact, Indara, the Jedi Master leader of the expedition to Brendok, did her absolute damnedest to follow the Jedi Code and not fuck with the natives. And yet Sol, well, I love my man Sol, alright? He fucked up, he did some stupid shit. I love my man Sol. But he got all in his emotions, not something a Jedi should do, formed an attachment to Osha, not something a Jedi should do, and led to all the subsequent bullshit. Emotions and attachment are exactly what the Jedi are supposed to avoid. So, no, it was not the Jedi being bad. However, the Jedi did do some shitty things. The actual bad stuff that the Jedi did do, like Vernestra covering up the whole incident, it's like nothing new. Did you watch the prequels? You watched the prequels, right? That was kind of the whole thing with the prequels, was that the Jedi were too arrogant to see the Sith literally growing up and taking over the Republic, like Sidious sitting right there in front of them. Like, that's kind of the whole thing, is that the Jedi Order was collapsing. Did you watch the prequels? Seriously. I don't understand this criticism. It doesn't make sense. It's not a new thing that the Jedi were fucking up. The fourth one being the goofy dialogue and the unrealistic saber fights. Again, the prequels, just in general. And before you pull that, oh, it was goofy / stupid when they did it over there too, I saw some of you idiots online try to be like, oh yeah, well, that Obi-Annie swing spin thing was also stupid. It's like, dude, I get it, right? If you don't like it, that's fine, okay? If you thought it was goofy, over the top or whatever, and it was too much for you, that's fine. But then, why are you here? There's plenty of other things for you to enjoy. If you don't enjoy this going all the way back to 20 years ago with the prequels, why are you still here? Just move on. We're not gonna judge you. There's other stuff. Why are you torturing yourself? If you didn't like it, why are you still trying to make it something to enjoy? You can move on, alright? Star Wars is goofy sometimes, or a lot of the time. Again, look at the prequels. And speaking of the prequels, they ruined Anakin's legacy. No. What the fuck are you talking about? They didn't. What? The twins being conceived through channeling the Force during a convergence is not the same as Anakin's birth. Dude was created by the Force, for the Force. And if it was the same, I mean, how does another character just coming to an existence the similar way change his story? He will already do the things that he did in the prequels and the original trilogy and everything. Like, none of that. They're not rewriting any of the movies and stuff. They're just adding on to it. And like, logically, right, it's been like a century since the Acolyte when Anakin comes around. So I mean, maybe the Force tried a couple times. Who knows? You know, it's not perfect. Besides, Ocean and May will be dead long before Anakin gets born, so who cares? Who cares? And speaking of who cares, Ki-Adi-Mundi's birthday. It's like C-tier Legends lore at best. And before this show, last I checked, we were all clowning on that motherfucker for being an idiot. Right? Because he was the one in the first place that was like, oh, the Sith haven't been seen in forever. Even though they had just seen a Sith.
He's a political idealist, not a murderer.
Nobody gave a shit about Ki-Adi-Mundi. Why do we suddenly care? He had like 3 minutes of screen time, and half of that was him being gunned down by the most dripped out clone in the galaxy. And leading out of that, the whole like idea of, oh, it breaks canon because the Sith were extinct. They said in the Phantom Menace that they'd not seen a Sith in 1,000 years. And I mean, for one, everyone that saw the Sith, who saw a red lightsaber, died. Like, the people that came in at the end, Vernestra and her crew, they came in after the fact. Chimera, fucking gone. Well, he was hiding in the shadows, but for all intents and purposes, fucking gone, right? They didn't see a red lightsaber. The only people that saw a red lightsaber either turned over to the dark side or died. So, you know, anyone still around still hadn't seen a Sith. And for two, yet again, it's the arrogance and the folly of the Jedi Order. Vernestra covering it up, trying to do some bullshit so Council doesn't realize that stuff is going on because it's her failure that Chimera is doing his shit. So she covered it up. And because of that, we got some Sith on the loose. It's so obvious, and I don't understand. It's either people who physically cannot understand any media they're watching, or they're being willfully ignorant. Either way, just shut up. And of course, the obvious, the whole, they made it woke, that's why it's bad. Fuck you. Okay? Grow a brain. Have an original thought. Wow, who would have thought that the series that was originally started as a commentary on how horrible imperialism is would be woke? That's weird. Like, we're really discovering fire here, guys. Come on. Oh, wait, hold on. No, you mean you don't want to see gay people or people of color, huh? That's what you mean, right? Right? Get the fuck out of here. Ugh, that left a bad taste in my mouth. Okay, I'm now going to talk about what I did enjoy from the show, and then we'll wrap this up from there. Part 3. The positives. Like I said, the Acolyte suffered from poor pacing and general poor writing. But there's so many great ideas and details that I loved that just kept me watching as a huge fan of the overall Star Wars series. I'm gonna just rattle it all off in no particular order. I would love to actually show clips from the show to accentuate what I'm talking about, but Disney just gets so much of a kick out of their DRM copyright bullshit that it's not worth the effort. First off, the fights. And I don't just mean the lightsaber duels, which were next level. The hand-to-hand martial arts combat was stellar. It somehow never occurred to me that this order of warrior monks would be well-versed in hand-to-hand combat. It makes perfect sense. With how often lightsabers seem to break and how taxing channeling the Force can be, a fighter's gotta have a backup. That intro fight between May and Indara set the stage for what to expect in the fights, and as somebody who deliberately avoids trailers, it got me hooked. I loved the Soul and May fight in episode 2 as well, putting on display May's cunning and intelligence, as well as Soul's situational awareness and mastery of the Force. So much characterization is spelled out in these fights, not needing to just sit us down and tell us how powerful they are, they just show it off. And it's great. And that comes back around in the lightsaber fights. When the stranger is just bodying unnamed Jedi we're meant to assume are just like a random grab bag of knights that were selected for a quick recon and detain mission, it was clear he was a force to be reckoned with. It also displayed his confidence in his fighting ability and style. Headbutting a lightsaber blade with a Cortosis helmet to remove a Jedi's defense so you can just get him down instantly. It's insanity, but it worked, and it was awesome. But when it came to Soul, who we already know can kick some serious ass in a fight, and his Padawan, that is clearly a prodigy, Chimera struggles, though not too much with the latter. Sorry, Jackie. A quick little detail I love is that his helmet was broken easily with a couple quick, elbow jabs. Because Cortosis, while an S-tier weapon against lightsabers, is incredibly brittle. That, paired with its rarity, is a big part of why we never really saw it in live action before. It's just not feasible to use on a large scale, though not for lack of trying, see throughout Alliances. Something that I really liked the Acolyte showed off in the beginning is that it took some of the tropes that you would usually find in this sort of mystery setting and just did away with them. Especially the tropes that usually piss me off and make me want to turn a show off. Too many times. Shows in like the mystery and then of course the sitcom genre do that whole I can explain thing, or the whole character refusing to believe another character's innocence bullshit. Those tropes kill my interest in a story, immediately. It is just a straight up okay, I'm done, bye. And oh my god, was I so pleasantly surprised to see that they did not do that. When Osha tells Soul that May is alive at the end of the first episode, he immediately goes, all right, hold on, pump the brakes a little bit. Let's work this out. That could explain why somebody matching Osha's description is killing people when Osha's right here. Let's see where this goes. He trusted, but then he verified. And even though Yord still doesn't trust Osha, the story doesn't play it into this shitty trope, where he's this back and forth I don't trust you. and then something happens to further erode his trust in her and all that shit. Instead, when Osha breaks out from the group in episode 2 and comes across Torben's corpse, there is a genuine lead up into one of those stupid, oh, I can explain moments where they don't actually let them explain and then just jump to conclusions. But that was shattered because in Yord's distrust, he actually tailed Osha when she split off, and was able to immediately clear of suspicion because he was watching her the whole time. He's like, there's no way she could have killed that dude. She was in my line of sight because I didn't trust her, and now I know that she's not the one killing people. Like, these moments, they're prime examples of somebody in the writer's room, somebody in there was cooking up something really good, which just makes the not great stuff later just makes me sad. Because they had something. They really had something with those early, like, trope-shattering sections, and then the fights, and a lot of the dialogue in the middle bits of the show. And they just, you know. Anyway, back to the positive stuff. I did see a lot of talk about the set designs not being great, which I don't fully understand. Maybe I just don't have like a sharp eye or something, but I thought all the visuals looked pretty good. They were at least on par with the prequels, and you know, people shit on the prequels CGI a lot these days, but I don't know, the prequels still hold up to me, and this show holds up visually pretty well too. The lightsabers still aren't like on par with what they had back in the early thousands, but that's just because the technology has changed and the stuff that they're using now is better for the actors, so I'm not really gonna complain about it, and it's not that much of a difference. They still look really good on screen. And the acting was really great too. The standouts, of course, being Manny Jacinto and Lee Jong-jae, but as I think most of us, even those who disliked the series, can still agree, but I don't know. I saw a lot of people saying Amandla Stenberg's acting was weak, and I have to disagree. Primarily, in my mind, acting is about selling your character, and they did nail it. I came across a post on Twitter like a month ago or so, or a few weeks, I don't know, something like that. It was showing Amandla working with stunt coordinators and like the choreography team, and they were just like running through a bunch of stunt stuff. And I had a moment of pause, because I'm like, wait a second, I don't remember Osha being in any fight scenes. What? Hold on a second. And I was sitting there just like running through the whole series in my head trying to figure out where Osha had a fight when it clicked that Amandla played two characters. They played Osha and May had fight scenes. And I just completely forgot because the performances were so drastically different for two different characters that that's good acting. You know, maybe it wasn't like the most dramatic performance of all time, like real cinema or whatever, but it was good acting. Their acting was good. They portrayed two different characters, and me and a lot of other people kind of actually forgot that it was two different people. Now, when they were both on screen, it became pretty clear that it was one actor for both people because, you know, you have to do some little visual fuckery to get that to look correct. Especially that scene where it's like they're hugging and it pans around. There were some people talking about how like, oh, that was so great. It made me forget that there were two different people played by one person, even though that scene for me just made it painfully obvious that it was one person because they were doing it so slowly and they were making very certain to only show one face at a time. But this isn't about that. This is about the acting. The acting overall, really, really good. I do not understand where people are coming from when they're saying the acting was flat or whatever. Osha was an emotionally stunted person who was going through grief and was not allowed to feel the grief because she entered the Jedi Order and they're not allowed to feel that sort of stuff that's part of being a Jedi. And then May was kind of like a loose cannon sort of thing. They were two very different personalities, and Amandla did both well. Like, all right, I'm saying it. They acted well. That's it. The acting was good, okay? Part 4. Why the cancellation sucks. There's a couple reasons why I'm unhappy about the unceremonious cancellation of the Acolyte. Of course, the obvious being I want the story to continue and have a chance to finish. While the season arc of mystery person killing Jedi was rounded off, the series arc of Osha and Chimera with the potential live-action fucking Plagueis exploring forbidden force techniques with probably more awesome fight scenes would be amazing to see, alright? It sucks leaving a story unfinished. And a corporation forcing that door closed because they didn't make a sizable margin really fucking sucks. But the other reason is that this will embolden the toxic fans. It already has. You know, while the show's not continuing, mostly probably due to budget reasons and Disney being Disney, because Disney doesn't give a shit what people on the internet are saying. All they care about is viewer metrics and making a return on their investment. All right. But the worst people on the internet are celebrating like the Death Star blew up, going to the accounts of the actors on the show and gloating upping harassment on people who just enjoyed the show, and just the general air of glee that they have about them is disgusting to see. Absolutely horrible behavior. What the hell is wrong with you? For me, even if it sticks and the Acolyte doesn't get renewed, I do hope that a lot of the staff on the show get used elsewhere, especially the fight choreography team. I need more of these fights injected into my veins, okay? And we still have Skeleton Crew and Andor Season 2 coming up, which I'm very excited for both. Skeleton Crew looks great. It's going to be a little bit more geared towards kids, but I think there's going to be a lot of great like additional lore stuff, and with Jod or whatever the hell his name is, I don't know, I don't watch trailers. It's going to be fun. And then of course Andor Season 1 was absolutely the gold standard for anything, and Season 2 is going to be fantastic as well. Very excited for all that. And of course, like I said at the beginning, Star Wars Outlaws coming out tomorrow, which by the way I'll be playing live here and over on Twitch at 10 a.m. Central. So, you know, if you enjoyed this, maybe pop into that because it's going to be fun. If you watched this far and you're not currently writing a vitriol-fueled comment or getting ready to write a hate video on this one, thank you for watching. Really, like I said at the beginning, this isn't exactly my usual content as I mostly talk about and play video games, but I mean, if that interests you, hit that subscribe button and stick around. But that's going to be all from me today. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.